Today's episode of the Cloudcast is sponsored by Datadog, the monitoring platform for cloud scale infrastructure and applications. Datadog provides dashboarding, alerting, application performance monitoring, and log management in one tightly integrated platform, so you can get end-to-end visibility quickly. And it integrates seamlessly with AWS, so you can start monitoring EC2, RDS, ECS, and all your other AWS services in minutes. Visualize key metrics, set alerts to identify anomalies, and collaborate with your team to troubleshoot and fix issues fast. Sign up for a free trial today, and Datadog will send you a free t-shirt. Visit datadoghq.com/cloudcast to get started. That's datadoghq.com/cloudcast.
Cloudcast Media presents from the massive studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. This is the Cloudcast with Aaron Delp and Brian Gracely, bringing you the best of cloud computing from around the world.
Good morning, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome back to the Cloudcast. We are coming to you live from the massive Cloudcast studios here in Raleigh, North Carolina. Crazy weather here in Raleigh today. We are getting all kinds of thunderstorms and rain and lightning and sort of monsoon weather. So apologize if you get any crackling in the background on this or if you hear any lightning or something. We are doing the best we can. Hopefully the power stays up for this podcast. Very, very excited today to talk about some cloud news of the week. You know, we've had sort of a slow couple of weeks, a few things here and there, and things picked up a little bit this week. So let's get right to it. First thing on the list was VMware acquired a company called Bitfusion, which really focuses on virtualized GPUs, really trying to, go after looking at GPUs now being a really big, important type of workload for, obviously started off as gaming, becoming more AI, ML, some of the advanced modeling that goes on there, high performance computing and so forth. So Bitfusion is going to, in VMware's world, sort of do the same type of virtualization that VMware's hypervisor originally did for CPUs, x86 type CPUs, for the GPU world. So VMware continuing to make acquisitions this year after things like Heptio and Bitnami and some others. They just acquired Bitfusion. So if you're a company with Bit in your name, be on the lookout for VMware's checkbook potentially coming your way. The second one on the list is, and this is something that it is crazy in 2019 that I feels like it literally got no attention this week. And we're paying it a little bit of attention, but this used to be an enormous announcement every year. So Gartner published their 2019 Cloud Infrastructure Magic Quadrant. This used to be the IaaS Magic Quadrant. A number of years ago, it was 15, 16 different companies. Over the last year or so, it's kind of whittled down to about 6 companies. So it is AWS, Azure, and Google. It is Oracle, IBM, and Alibaba now on the list. So just 6 companies that make the cloud infrastructure. And of course, this is public cloud infrastructure. So it came out, as has been for the last 8, 9, 10 years. AWS is in the lead by somewhat of a considerable amount still over Azure. But, we're still starting to see some play between those. But they did have a very interesting section this year. Usually it's lots about capabilities, which they always include. But they did have some criticisms this year of all of the cloud providers. So we'll have the link in the show notes to the report. But take a look at it. It's, some criticisms, I think fair. Lydia Leung always does a great job with it. But that is out this week. Last 2 things on our list are both Microsoft related. So Microsoft, we talked last week about IBM winning a $1 billion or so deal with AT&T, sort of a partnership / deal with AT&T around IBM hosting some of the AT&T applications in the IBM cloud, and then IBM using AT&T's SDN network. This week, Microsoft was awarded a billion or multi-billion-dollar cloud deal with AT&T. So AT&T is going to be moving their desktop usage, not desktop usage, but like Office 365 over to Microsoft Azure. They're looking to run some of their applications over in the Azure cloud as well. So AT&T becoming a very, very big multi-cloud, hybrid cloud customer, making some partnership arrangements with both IBM and this week Microsoft. So interesting to watch those deals come along. It'll be interesting to see how the money flows on those things as well and how much that influences other things in the industry. And then the final one was Microsoft made a $1 billion investment into one of Elon Musk's company, OpenAI, and they are sort of a partnership investment going to be very focused on building new supercomputing types of technologies in the Azure cloud. So a lot of focus on AI, allowing supercomputers in the Azure cloud, and big investment from Microsoft into the OpenAI company. So with that, we're going to wrap up the cloud news of the week. Like we said, a couple of different things there, some acquisitions, some partnerships, and again, the Cloud Magic Quadrant, which just used to be an enormous day, and now it's just a footnote. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up. We have a very, very interesting interview with our old friend, Stu Miniman. Stu had a chance to be out at the Amazon Mars event, not the AWS, but Amazon Mars event. So we're going to talk about what Mars meant in terms of what went on at that event, but more importantly, how does it signal some of the things that are going on with Amazon, the broader, and some of the interaction between Amazon, the broader parent company, and AWS, the technology arm of that, and how the two interact with each other. So look forward to our interview with Stu. Let's get to it. Today's show is sponsored by DigitalOcean. DigitalOcean offers the simplest, most developer-friendly cloud platform. It's optimized to make managing and scaling apps easy with an intuitive API, multiple storage options, integrated firewalls and load balancers, a new managed Kubernetes service, and much more. From predictable pricing to flexible configurations to world-class customer support, you'll get access to all the infrastructure services you need to grow your business. Plus, DigitalOcean's community provides over 2,000 tutorials to help you stay up to date on the latest open source software, languages, and frameworks. So to get started on DigitalOcean for free, with a free $50 credit, go to do.co/cloudcast. That's do.co/cloudcast. And we are back. It is good to be back with everybody this week. And this is, for those of you that have not listened to the show very long, we apologize. This is going to be a little bit of an old school sort of show. Old school in the sense of everybody's on the show, and we're bringing back a guest who has been probably as long a time a friend of the show as possible, but somebody who we've periodically had on, we've not had on enough. Aaron, first off, how are you, man? How you been?
I'm good. Things have been going good. It is hot here in North Carolina. Heat wave kind of going through the entire country, but North Carolina in particular, man, it is just brutal.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, we're going to get probably, like I said, probably our oldest friend of the show, bring him back to the show. It's been way too long. Stu Miniman, welcome back to the show.
Brian, it's great to be back with you. And Aaron, I feel blessed to have your presence here on the program with me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to make these appearances more often. We shall see how the rest of the year goes.
Yeah. Well, I see you plenty, but just as Brian said, I've only been on the program a couple of times, and it's the first time all three of us have been on your program together, even though I've had both of you together on theCUBE, my program.
That is correct.
Yeah. So for anybody, Stu, for anybody who doesn't know you, and shame on you if they don't, tell us about what you do on a regular day-to-day basis, both in written form and media form.
Yeah, thanks. So Stu Miniman, I'm a senior analyst. The research part of our business is called Wikibon. We have a video program called theCUBE. So, Brian was actually on the show the first time we ever had it back in 2010, was on the program a number of times and even worked for us for a year throughout the span of it. So I'm an analyst. My background is virtualization and networking. And these days, I work on all sorts of cloudy stuff. And with the video program, theCUBE, I get to travel to way more conferences than anybody would really like to. But I get to talk to amazing people and, share back with the community what we're doing. And we're all under this umbrella of what we call SiliconANGLE Media. So my co-CEOs, Dave Vellante and John Furrier, do even more interviews than I do. And we put it out, video is our primary focus, but, still do plenty of written word analysis, a little bit of consulting here and there. And cover the whole enterprise tech space.
And Stu, as you mentioned, you go to way too many tech conferences at times, it seems like. But we should almost probably do a separate show about how not to get conference crud, because it seems like you're practically immune to it. I don't know if it's just you built up the immunities over the years or what, but we'll save that topic for another day.
I do always carry airborne with me and take it on the planes. And so there is a certain thing. Make sure you get enough sleep, eat while you can, charge your battery while you can. And you do need to recover after these. I'm actually on vacation this week, but happy to chat with you guys.
So what are some of the, we're going to get into the core of why we asked you to be on this week, but what are some interesting topics, trends, things you've seen over the last few months, or kind of the front half of the year of conference season, if you will?
Actually, before you get into that, Stu, I want you to do something for the folks that may not have listened for long enough. Tell folks what the one thing you did for this podcast, which was probably the most important thing that ever happened on this podcast.
I didn't think we were going to talk about that. We're going to go there. Here we go.
So right. When Brian, you'd called me up and said, hey, Aaron and I are doing this podcast. I've actually known Aaron longer than I've known you, Brian, back from my EMC days when we worked on the pre-VBlock stuff. So I worked with you, Brian, on VBlock stuff, but Aaron was working on the pre-VBlock stuff back when he was a channel partner. And I'm like, cool, what's it going to be? I think we're doing networking, but we might do a little cloud. And we've got this, great joke, of a thing. We were talking about all these networks coming together. And you said, we're going to call it Two Guys, One Wire. And I was like, Brian, that's an awful, awful idea. Change it immediately. And you're like, I don't understand why. And I'm like, well, let's just say there's this thing on this internet that sounds a little bit like this, and it's pretty bad. So call Anil Lakhani up, and if he has the exact same reaction as me, change the name. And of course, Anil had the exact same reaction as me. We're familiar with the South Park episode that focused on that internet video, and luckily the Cloudcast, I think, much better name for you and set you up for the trajectory of where you were going, as opposed to we're all networking guys as background. But that was a
lesson learned. Don't try and be cute.
Exactly. We are
or either that or heavily search for things to make sure that you're not ending up on some awful meme.
That's right. Computers 101, naming is hard.
Yeah, talk to your teenagers and see if they go like, Dad, come on, that's awful.
Yep. All right, so back to it.
Yeah. So conferences, boy, it does for me. It gets to a little bit of a blur. The last couple of years, all things Amazon have been very much consuming, as both of you know all too well. So when I get a chance to go to an Amazon show, it's usually pretty good. Last year, one of my favorite shows was the Amazon Public Sector show, getting to talk to all the government, nonprofit, education space, really deep in that vertical. I'll be at the Amazon New York City Summit, and of course, reInvent's the mega one, but reInvent's gotten so big that these kind of regional and specialized shows have been nice. My preference always is if I can go to smaller shows, I love it. Of course, most times when we're doing our video production, it does tend to be the bigger ones. We do some shows where it's only a few hundred people, but oftentimes it's thousands, if not tens of thousands of people there. But the small show where you can actually interact with not just high quality attendees, but some of the speakers and the like are the ones that I like. And big themes this year are kind of a lot of the same. The growing what's happening in cloud, how multi-cloud is really starting to come into focus. Everybody had gotten super excited for a bunch of years talking about Azure Stack, and Azure Stack for Microsoft was kind of, their first iteration, and they've been making changes to that. They just made an announcement on like Azure Stack HCI, but everybody got all excited when Amazon came out with their Outpost now. And how does that VMware and Amazon relationship has been a big topic of conversation for the last year or two. So those are some of the big things we've been kind of teasing in. What really is this hybrid and multi-cloud space? Is it just least common denominator cloud? Many of the things we've all been talking for years. It's where did that old PaaS layer go through to how am I managing my infrastructure, how am I managing my applications that sit on top of things. So in many ways it's just continuation of what we've been talking about, but key themes have been bubbling up, like multi-cloud, as we said, and security, which they just had a big Amazon held the first cloud security show up in my backyard of Boston. I didn't personally go, but the team was there and had some really good content there from what I'm told.
Yeah, so let's talk about some of these newer shows that are out there. You had a chance a couple of weeks ago to attend this event. So Jeff Bezos, obviously, folks know him from Amazon, but also involved in a lot of things. He's been hosting this show called Mars for a little while, and they're now having an event called Amazon Mars. So help us.
It's actually Remars.
Remars.
Yeah,
because everything is something. Exactly. It's as Corey Quinn likes to say.
That's an example of trying to be cute, right?
Well, it's like Corey Quinn likes to say, everything now with Amazon is like an email forward title. So what is this stuff? Why does it become a Bezos conference to an Amazon conference?
Yeah, and first of all, right when we heard there was a conference about like space, robotics, machine learning, and automation, I jumped at it. So actually, it was one of the few times that I will go to a conference that number one was in Vegas, and number two, we weren't doing our videos. So really, I was there for an editorial purpose, to learn, to go to sessions. I actually went to like 6 or 7 sessions, which are more than I usually do in a year. Learn a lot, talk to people. I wrote up kind of my findings from it, and it was fascinating. It was a little bit weird because, if you put those topics together and you say, okay, yeah, I can understand how everything goes together. Amazon really talked about it, that, AI and ML is the underpinning for everything these days. And, if you look at that space, I understand how it fits into automation and robotics and even into space. But it was kind of an eclectic mix and a little bit disjointed from a content standpoint, because as they said themselves, the number one goal for the show was for Amazon, not AWS, but Amazon, to show a little bit underneath the covers of what happens inside the fulfillment centers and what they're using from a technology standpoint. I found very similar to what we've seen for the last 6-7 years at Amazon reInvent for the big AWS show. So it was really interesting and eclectic. It was about 2,000 to 3,000 people. It was the Aria, which is a really nice venue, and the attendees of the event were really, really good. So it was invite only. They brought in a whole bunch of celebrities. First of all, the keynote speakers. It was just you go through like 10 keynote speakers, and every single one of them could have been a main keynote at a sizable conference, and it was just really good presentations. Capped off from Robert Downey Jr. on the end of the opening night, talking about how he's going to save the environment with robotics and the like. So he might not be Iron Man anymore, but he's still trying to save the planet. So yeah, fascinating content, amazing people. When I'm riding the bus to the Las Vegas Speedway, the guy sitting next to me, I'm like, oh, hey, what brings you here? He's like, oh, I'm the co-founder of this 3D printing company where we print metal and we're printing rockets. And it was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Tell me all about that. So I totally geeked out and did love the show. It was quite amazing.
Well, so that sounds amazing. And so let me step back for a second though. And so Mars, it's, it stands for machine learning, automation, robotics, and space. And as you mentioned, some of that stuff, especially the machine learning automation, kind of goes to their, I'll say, core platform, if you will, the fulfillment centers and whatnot. And of course, obviously the super fringy stuff go into space, right? And so because you have this core to fringe and it's a small conference all at the same time, who typically would attend these things other than enthusiasts? Like, are we in the super early adopter stage? Tell me a little bit about like who goes and who's interested in the conversations.
Yeah, so great question, Aaron. What it actually reminded me of is, early on in a lot of the shows that we've gone to over the years, so, the Kubernetes show, the OpenStack, and things like that, the primary attendees here were the builders. So these are the ones that, they had all the universities there with their projects. They had startups that were getting funded to be in this space, and people that were looking to grow in this space. So I actually felt that I, as kind of an enthusiast watcher, was a little bit more of the exception rather than the rule. Now, there were some of the people that we know in the space. So some of the folks that you normally would see at Serverless Conf, like Ben Kehoe from iRobot, or, Ryan Cronenberg from A Cloud Guru were there. But, walking around the show, it was a slice of it was the AWS people that are familiar with the solutions that are used there, like Rekognition and Lex and Poly and some of the Alexis pieces under it. But a lot of these people were researchers or people in industry that are working on these technologies. I've got a little bit of background in some of the space stuff. I studied mechanical engineering, but I was really impressed as to how they weren't talking about science fiction. They were talking about what we're doing today and the latest in satellites, and how, one presentation I went to, they said, we're going to have, gigabit Ethernet from satellite, and it's going to be rock solid. And they've got this 3-tiered layer, and they showed all of these pieces. And it was like, okay, cool. When we talk about the network and edge computing, not only is it that network layer up in space, but it's even going to be able to do processing. So all of the imaging that I can get from the satellites, it's got the compute and storage, kind of like the Snowball Edge up there in space. So it could actually process that and then just share the information that it needs. So it was one thing, I'd say is all of this wasn't very much future. It was, we're doing this today. Here's the latest drones. Here's the latest robots. Here's all the things we're doing like right now. And, you can either buy them or, have them available later this year. So that was pretty impressive.
So a lot of people kind of joked a little bit when at the AWS event, they announced this thing called Ground Station, which was, hey, we will manage your ground stations for your satellite things. Did you, at the time people were like, who in the world needs that? And why are we talking about that in AWS? Did you get the sense that there is a community of people out there that is now very excited that Amazon's going to basically do for space what they've done for IT?
Yeah, it's Brian. I had the exact same reaction as you did. I actually got to interview Randall Hunt, who's with AWS. He's one of the people that goes around and speaks at a lot of shows, and he's former NASA. So I'd interviewed him back in January at a regional show up here in New England, and it was like, come on, you're making space easy, but there are certain applications where I'd like to be able to leverage this technology and turnkey it. We've seen how excited everybody is with not just what Bezos's Blue Origin's doing, but you talk about SpaceX and what's happening with lowering the price of launching these the rockets, and therefore all the satellites that go with them. So one of the big asks that they actually had at the show is, if you want to work in the space industry, or if you have an idea for that next billion-dollar space company, they were looking for everybody to dig in because, they feel that we are, really close to be able to start launching all of these new industries because we can, one, get things up into space at a lower price point. And number two, they're actually not that far off from being able to leverage resources in space. So it was a thing. I'm a little curious as to how this works, but they actually want to, not, go do the, fly off to an asteroid, but harvest resources from the moon. Now that they found ice on the South Pole and there's lots of minerals there, can they start mining it? I'm a little concerned as to that we're going to have another battle over resources between countries. And, how much resources are we going to suck dry from the moon after we've been just doing it here on Earth? But fascinating to talk about. And from the people I talked to at the show, it is, the near future for a lot of this stuff to happen.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so let me kind of dig in a little bit more on when you're talking more about the concept of the ideas, and some of these ideas are pretty fringy at times, right? When we looked at the agenda, a number of the sessions were VC related, if you will, venture capital. And so do you see this event being a little bit less like a normal tech event and more like the continual blurring of tech and VC? And because obviously some of these things we're talking about require pretty significant levels of funding.
Yeah, I did attend one of the VC sessions, and it was a little bit more lightweight than some of the other sessions where they had, the scientists, the engineer digging in on it. But it's not something that I've seen at many shows, the VCs presenting. But it overall was not like there were more VCs there than I see at Amazon reInvent. It's just since there is a bit of nascency in this market, they're looking out there, and mostly I think they were presenting because a lot of the attendees there were startups and people that had ideas, and therefore they were looking to add to their portfolios. So yeah, it's I don't know how much it's blurring the lines there, but absolutely there's a lot of investment. I know something that you look at often is where is the investment? There's plenty of shows we go to where it's like okay, why is there so much VC funding, or why isn't there a lot of VC funding? And this area definitely has VC funding in spades.
So the VCs were pitching to to get investors or to get people to invest in.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, there's lots of people I talked to there that, right, either they were going to be looking for funding or, might make sense for them to go be an entrepreneur in residency at a VC if they weren't quite ready to work at one of these other companies.
Yeah, well, and I think part of it is we're seeing more and more that as Amazon wants to get into more businesses, we're seeing them. There's Amazon, like what we think of as the fulfiller. There's AWS, but there's obviously there's Amazon sort of investment. I think people are kind of realizing that as more businesses kind of get centered around AWS or different parts of Amazon, like they're going to shorten the cycles between figuring out where to invest, how is a business growing, is there a viable, is there market fit and so forth. So like Amazon is doing a very interesting thing in terms of we're going to try and shorten the cycles here. If you want to continue to participate, you're going to potentially have to do it on our turf to be around the conversations.
No, Brian, you're totally right. And one of the things that I was looking for is most people, when you talk about Amazon and you talk about AWS, they think of them as two separate companies. And there's even been, discussion, should they break up? And boy, in the political space, the big companies should all be split up. But it was really clear if you attended the show that Amazon and Amazon Web Services are the same company. Every time if you dig under the covers as to what Amazon's doing, there's a whole lot of AWS services underneath them. And absolutely the AWS people are leveraging what is learned from the scale of what Amazon is doing. The robotics, the fulfillment center, everything else that's going on there. And for those of us that are Prime members, which I'm sure most of your audience is, it's been fascinating for me to watch that, there used to be the argument of like, okay, I order Amazon Prime and do I actually get it in the 2 days like they promised? But the last couple of months, most of the time when I'm ordering, the option is, actually, it's next day for free. And if you order $35 of qualifying stuff, you'll actually get it same day. And I live in, 26 miles outside of Boston. I'm not in one of those areas where you can get stuff delivered in an hour or so, but I've had stuff delivered pretty fast. Heck, even when I was in Vegas, I hadn't realized how hot it was going to be and needed a pair of shorts. And rather than, go pay $100 down at the gift shop, it was like, oh, wait, I don't need them for 2 days. I ordered it off Amazon and had them delivered in plenty of time so that I could go attend the Raceway event at the end of the show. So, what you heard from the Amazon people is their driving goal is to get stuff to you faster and cheaper. And when I talked to the head of robotics, and he said, people always ask me what robots are going to look like in the future in 5 years. And he said, I have no idea, but I do know that if I keep delivering things faster and cheaper, that's going to help our business. And that's just the constant driver on their side. And we do see it trickling and delivering back to the end users for Amazon.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's sort of the analogy I think you get is when that's your driving motivation, you make concessions or decisions about other things. Like, the other day we got some box from Amazon and it was, think of it, the contents of it on the inside was probably about as big as a box you would get for like an iPhone, but the box that it came in was about, 24 inches by 18 inches. And my daughter's immediate thing was like, well, wait a minute, why is that little thing in that big giant box? And I kind of had to explain to her, well, there are some other mechanisms for how they pack and so on and so forth. But, making the box experience the smallest possible wasn't the focus. It was how do we get them in the box fast and all those other things like that.
Yeah.
Hey, Stu, so let me ask you this. So we kind of mentioned it briefly at the beginning, and maybe we'll kind of close out on this to bring it back to the Mars show specifically. Do you see now, because reInvent, let's be really honest, reInvent has gone from the show of the year that probably everyone should go to, but now because of that, everyone is there, and it is borderline painful now because of how many people are there. And we're starting to see this disaggregation of the shows, if you will. We've got the Mars show, we've got the security, what was it, reinforced maybe?
Yep.
Yeah, and then you've got the regional summits, if you will. Now, do you think that this is going to be a trend into, because it is at times different audiences, almost into specialty events and subcategories and regionals? Is this a trend that they're going to double down on?
So actually, what I think we see here is if you followed any of the big conference shows, that you often had the main show and then you have a road show. And Amazon is just so big that they've ended up tiering things. You've always had, little, special interest group, birds of a feather type events, usually either in a show or, let's send a couple of execs and do something in a couple hours in a hotel. Amazon is just so big that they can spin off all of these small little shows. So I mentioned the Amazon Public Sector Show. Well, that's the big one in DC, but they actually do public sector events all around the world. And they even have a special breakout just for the education subgroup of this. And Amazon can easily get hundreds, if not thousands of people on any of these. When I go to one of the regional summits, the New York City summit is, 12, 15,000 people. The, London summit's even bigger than that. I hear the one in Australia is massive, like somewhere around, 20, 25,000. So Amazon is just so big that the typical main show and then a bunch of small things is now getting into main shows, regional shows, and then even smaller ones underneath. So I don't know if it's a general trend, but Amazon does kind of set the bar for where a lot of these things are going. The question on Reinforce specifically is, they position this as the cloud security show. It is a shot across the bow at RSA conference, which has been, the show for security for as long as I can remember. Now, I want to dig in and talk to the people that were there because it was a little disheartening. And I talked to friends of mine that are deep in security space, and they went to RSA conference. They came back and they're like, "Oh my God, Stu, it is nothing but doom and gloom. We are all screwed. Ransomware is going to take us everywhere. There is no way to secure anything. We might as well just, it doesn't matter if you throw $1 billion at this. There's no way to be secure." And of course, a big blocker for cloud for many years, but now a driver for cloud many times is security. So, was Reinforce just Amazon? Are some of the other cloud players going to get involved? Where can the cloud industry change that dialogue for security? So it is interesting, but it's. I think there's always been specialty events, but I think Amazon just supercharges all of these environments. And to their credit, they do a good job at events. Yes, reInvent is, but Aaron, I have to disagree. Not borderline painful. It absolutely is painful.
I was trying to be nice.
Yeah, no. But what I'd say is when it got, about 2 years ago, when it sprawled out to 7 or 8 places, the first year it was just awful. But they learned, and it reached the point, hey, you can actually stay in one building and not be like, I need to go to 2 or 3 buildings in one day, because they would repeat every session, not just repeat it 2 or 3 times, but repeat it in different buildings so that you could generally stay in one place. Now, I'm usually lucky when I go, I can kind of go to the keynote. And if that's in the building I'm in, that's great. If not, I can just, watch it, on one of the big screens somewhere. And then I just go to our video location and I'm there all day, as opposed to, trying to get into a session. Did I pre-register? Did I go through that whole process? So Amazon doesn't necessarily get it right the first time, but they do listen and learn and iterate really, really fast. And that's one of the things I've been most impressed about them as a company is, if there's something that you poke at them and you say, this is the fatal flaw in what AWS is doing. I was like, well, you got to understand that if we're saying that, they're listening and they're probably working on it. And if they, if you don't think that they're going to overcome this in the next 6 or 12 months, you haven't been watching them. It used to be, that security SLA was something that people were concerned about. And, if you look at what's happening with the whole, Jedi contract, the latest update is, it sure looks like Amazon's winning that. So if good enough for the federal government as, the primary supplier, most people are going to pay attention and listen.
Yeah. I think your point, it was interesting, your point about the security, kind of the RSA folks being all doom and gloom and everything's terrible. One of the headlines I actually got as a kind of a highlight of the Reinforce conference was basically one of the key themes from Amazon was, don't be so doom and gloomy about this. Don't be so sad about it and so forth. And it's interesting in the context of when reInvent got started. reInvent was essentially, for essentially like shadow IT. It was saying, hey, if you think IT sucks, if you hate your IT group, we're here to be, kind of your better IT group. Essentially, they're doing the same thing in the security industry. They're saying, hey, if your belief is security sucks, it's impossible, come over here. We don't think it necessarily sucks and is impossible. So, certain things kind of repeat themselves if you pay close enough attention. Hey, I'm gonna kind of wrap it up with that, Aaron. I think I think that my biggest takeaway from this is Amazon is basically giving us a blueprint for how to spin off the Cloudcast. So we're now going to have Cloudcast. We're going to have Cloudcast Security. We're going to have Cloudcast Mars. We're going to have Cloudcast Government. We're going to probably end up having 10, 12 shows a week to be able to keep up with all the variations.
That's right. Hey, Stu, any last comments on Mars or anything else that kind of really jumped out at you before we close it up?
Yeah. So one last comment that I think you guys would appreciate, and the audience might too. So I mentioned they had some great celebrities there. I happened to be in the right place at the right time, actually, to get a selfie with Magic Johnson. That was pretty cool. Shaq was there. I saw him from remote, but I actually got to say hi for a quick second to Adam Savage of Mythbusters. He's got a new book that came out, and he gave a session. So I don't know about you both, but I love watching Mythbusters with my family. Talk about people that geek out on science. But just a story that he said is that Adam and Jamie, when they started this, they were just hackers. They were trying this stuff. He's like, we're not really educated. We don't really know this. But they would go talk to, as he would say, real scientists and people doing all this stuff. And they were like, and they treated us as peers. And it took us a long time to get over, like, oh my God, no, you're the real people, and we're just kind of storytellers and doing some entertainment stuff for TV. So when I watch what you've done on the Cloudcast and the people you've talked to, you've always had some great people, but you started this to learn, and I've enjoyed going on the ride with it. But to hear somebody like Adam Savage, who did this for years, and he said, in many ways, he's like, I'm still don't know what I'm doing, just hacking around and playing with this stuff. He just has this curiosity, and he loves playing with this stuff, and therefore he learns, and he did these TV shows. But there's so many of us that learn from that, so it just really resonated with me as someone that I've gotten to speak and meet with amazing people, initially through when I was a blogger and doing social media, and now doing video, and still feel blessed to be able to talk and meet with so many people in the industry and share the experiences. So just for the audience out there, we all started out just as some people in the industry with some curiosity, and talk to people and share. So if it's good enough for Adam Savage, it's that the rest of us could really learn from that. So it was just inspiring.
Excellent stuff. Well, Stu, it has been too long from having you on the Cloudcast. Obviously, we see you lots and lots out and about, but we need to make sure that we don't make this a 2-3 year event. We need to get you back on more often. Thank you so much for the time. Thank you for the insight as always, and hopefully we get to see you out in person here very, very soon.
Yeah, Aaron and Brian, hope we can grab breakfast at Mel's one of these days soon, and thanks for having me on again.
Absolutely. Well, folks, with that, we're going to wrap it up. Thanks for Stu and for Aaron and for everybody for listening, for telling a friend, for rating it on iTunes. And with that, we're going to wrap it up, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to The Cloudcast. Please visit thecloudcast.net to find more shows, show notes, videos, and everything social media.